All right, we are back online. It is Wednesday, April 29th, and welcome to our latest and upcoming webinar. This one I'm really excited about, guys. It's SEO, search engine optimization, and we are specifically surrounding this around eye care practices. If you've never joined us before and you're new to this webinar series, we are marketing for ECPs. We are a digital agency. We support the eye care industry with everything to do with digital marketing. When COVID sort of hit and everybody is at home, we kind of got together and said, we need to, what a great opportunity to create some content and share some of the information that we have that so many of our clients and just people we talk to in the industry ask us about. So really, we put together an 8-series webinar. This one is number 4, and it's all about SEO. I am joined with an incredible team today, and I'm going to play a little game called Building Isolationships, so you get to know who they are. First, I would like to introduce Bryn Lowe. Bryn is an SEO strategist for marketing for ECPs. And the way the game plays, I'm going to ask you a question. You get to answer the question, and then you get to ask Wade a question. So Bryn, I'm noticing you have guitars behind you, one for a human and one for a child, it looks like. What is your favorite song to play on the guitar?
I get called out on this on almost every call. They're not actually my guitars, they're my boyfriend's. The little baby one, the little ukulele is mine, the child-sized one. But yeah, no, not actually my guitars.
Oh, interesting. I thought you were cool for a second, because I can't play. I always look up to people that can. Thank you.
Wade, your turn next. Wade, tell us about how you kicked your family out of the house for this webinar.
Oh, man. Hey, everybody. Wade Horb, VP of Sales and Member Success at Marketing for ECPs. Good question, Bryn. Thank you for putting me on the spot. That was kind of a private, information I shared with you earlier. But hey, listen, the reason I kicked my family out of the house was because I have 2 sons, and they are characters, probably not unlike their father. And they love to always walk by and, maybe it's just sharing too much information, but they like to dance and twerk, actually, which is crazy, right? So they like to shake their booty in front of me, trying to get some sort of like laughter out of me, which kind of throws me off. So I begged my wife and I said, listen, I make dinner tonight. Just please take the boys, go for a walk. Just give me some time without worrying about them dancing in front of me. So thanks for that, Brandon. Appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, question for Kevin. So Kevin, listen, we've been at home now, what is it, 6.5 weeks? I'm curious, like, you're a family man. What have you been doing with the family? Like, what's new?
So that's interesting. Normally, this is travel season, as I'm sure it is for many people on the call. I think I am missing my 5th or 6th work-related trip this weekend. So I get to be home. Very fortunate about that and grateful. We actually took my youngest, he's 4, we took him out and he learned how to ride without training wheels. So we did the bike ride training this weekend. So, that's good and scary at the same time. For those that don't know me, my name is Kevin Wilhelm. I am the president and co-founder of Marketing for ECPs. And again, this is a webinar series all about supporting the eye care industry. Today is specifically about SEO. We have kind of 2 announcements before we get started. One is this seemed to be very popular last week, so we decided to extend it, just kind of the same sort of offer. We are doing complimentary website audits, where Wade's team takes your website URL. We look at it like everything we're going to talk about today: website speed, unique content. We talk about the structure and where it ranks and all of that. And we put together sort of a kind of a 15-20 minute overview presentation, and then we just review it with you live. So if you go to our website, marketingforecps.com, fill out the request a website audit form. Wade's team gets it. They complete it and they'll contact you. I'd also like to, of course, thank Johnson & Johnson Vision Care for their support of these webinar series. They have been a fantastic partner when it comes to helping us craft and decide kind of what the topic should be. They've been a fantastic partner throughout this, so I would like to take a second and thank them for their support. So let's dive in. The agenda for today, we're going to do kind of 5 quick topics. So one is SEO made simple. SEO can be very complicated, so we're going to boil it down to just the nuts and bolts. We're going to talk about algorithm changes that have happened over the last like 10 years, but really specific how it's affected eye care with a medic update. Then we're going to talk about tools that you can use at home or in the practice in terms of identifying SEO opportunities and helping you execute. And we will talk about tangible tips and tricks that you can execute yourself. Last, we'll finish with Q&A. As always, please put comments, put questions in wherever you're watching, whether this is Facebook or YouTube. We will answer them live if it is topical, or we will get to them at the end. So first question, Wade, this one's for you. You know, you've spent your whole year or your whole career talking about SEO and digital marketing. What is SEO?
Oh man, $1 million question. So as you mentioned, Kevin, so over my career, I've had the opportunity to speak to a lot of people about a lot of different types of digital marketing programs. And the interesting piece is that SEO always seems to come up and is probably if not the most confusing one for practice owners. So what I try to do is keep it simple, as you mentioned, and I dial it back. Like I try to peel those layers back, and I really boil it down to what the nature of SEO is first. So what you're looking at here on this slide is, you can see that there's 3 parties, and each one of these parties have a responsibility and they exchange information. So for example, like a user asks the question, and when they ask the question to Google, what Google's going to do is they're going to provide listings. And so they want to provide as much information as possible. And then of course, you as the practice owner, your website should answer the question of the user. So maybe just to give it a bit more color, if you want to maybe go to slide 2. Yeah, so back in like 2017, 2018, Google coined a term called micro moments. And man, I loved when they spoke about micro moments because as users, we could relate, and it was so easy to relate. So you can imagine at any given point in time, you know, you have a micro moment, it's like you want to know something, therefore you search for it. You want to like do something, or you want to go somewhere, or maybe you want to buy something. Either way, those micro moments turn into that question or that search query that a user will do. And of course, Google, wanting to offer the greatest user experience, what they do is they want to generate as many listings and as much information as possible to answer your question. But they have to also make sure that those listings, there's 10 per page. And of course, when you think of like getting onto page 1, they have to have a specific rank, so 1 through 10. So what Google does is Google takes its algorithm, or I like to say their caramel secret, so to speak. And what they do is they take over 200 plus ranking factors, and each factor is weighted differently. And this is where it kind of becomes confusing, right? Because we don't know what all of those are, or the weighting of each one. And so what it does is that dictates rank 1 through 10 on each page. So really, a practice owner, what they can do is they, again, want to think of like, what is my patient going to ask? What do they want to know? And so they want to provide as much information as possible on their website so that they look like they're the authority in that.
Okay, well, makes sense. So like, why? Why do people care? Why is SEO important in not only today's world? It's been important for 10 years, but why is it especially important today?
Well, you know, again, as confusing as SEO can be, it is extremely important because I think the one thing that practice owners speak to me about is they want to know, like, how come I'm not ranking on page 1? How come somebody that has just started their practice, say, months or just even a year ago, or is outranking myself, who have been in business for 10 or 15 or 20 years. And then of course, I just don't want to rank under, say, optometrists or ophthalmologists. I also want to rank under eye exams or contact lenses. So they really want to improve their rank. So I think it's real estate for sure. They want to make sure that when people are doing a search, they're showing up front and center. And the interesting piece, that kind of leads into point number 2, because again, it goes without saying that if you're going to rank and you're going to jump from, say, page 2 to page 3, or sorry, page 3 to page 2 to page 1, rank 10 to 8, 5, 3, 1 kind of thing on page 1, you're going to see more traffic to your website. And with that traffic comes like an increase in leads, and in that increase of leads comes more conversions. So once the practice is seeing more leads and more conversions, it's delivering a great return on investment, which is why people know that, hey, if you can help me move up that rank and get traffic to my website, I know my practice will be more successful. I can book more patients. I can let them know more about what we do here in our practice.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Oh, sorry, Kevin.
No, I was just going to ask Bryn, like, can you give us more specifics, like around how important is it to be kind of sort of first and top of the page on a Google search result page?
Yeah, I mean, even if you think back to the last time you did a Google search, when was the last time you went to the second page of Google? Probably never, right? And even past the top 3 search results, 75% of people will only click on the first 3 search results. So the higher you can be on the front page, especially, the more traffic you're going to get to your website.
Yeah, so even everyone kind of knows the inherent value of being on the first page, but what you're saying, it even matters more to be higher up on that first page in those top 3 positions. And that's really what SEO has become. It's not just about first page, because I believe even the 10th, like the bottom of page 1, only 1% of traffic is getting clicked on that. So it's almost the same as getting to the page 2. So it's really about getting to that top of page 1, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. And so, we talk about how to get there. We're going to really dive into that. I think it's important that we take just a few minutes to talk about the history of the algorithms that Google has had. So there's a lot of information here. We don't want to go through every algorithm update, but can you kind of highlight sort of what we're looking at here and why it's relevant to talk about the timeline of changes?
Sure, absolutely. So interestingly enough, like over this last decade, you can see there's multiple updates that Google has made to their algorithm. And the funny thing is that this is not actually all of them. These are just the main ones. So Google's always trying to do their very best. If you think back to what I said earlier, a couple slides back, that Google wants to deliver the best user experience. So they're constantly working at their algorithm to make sure that what a user gets with from an answer perspective is going to be of the highest value to them. So in that, when you look at this, there's a few things that are highlighted here. And what Google's done in some of these highlighted ones that we put here on the slide is like they've improved content quality. They've got rid of like links that had no relevancy to essentially what the user was searching for. There's a piece in there where they realized that searches were happening so fast and frequent, and so much so on mobile, that if you didn't have a mobile responsive site, that's not a good user experience. But I think the one that I want to drive the most attention to, it's the last highlighted one at the end there under 2018. So Google made an algorithm update called the Medic update. And so this is kind of like for your life, for your money kind of idea. And that was like the theme that they ran with it. And what it meant was that, if you dealt with someone's finances, or if you were like a medical practitioner, that your site could have either seen great lift or great fall, depending on the content that you had on your site. So like to give you an example, and you have in this slide, like celiac.com is a website, and of course it speaks to those that are celiac. So you might go to this site and see things like a video on how to make a great carrot cake, or an article around vitamins to take, or how like nutrition or exercise. But it's going to give you a lot of information that if you're celiac, it's beneficial. But you can see here, like in May, June, and July, they were getting great numbers in terms of the amount of keywords they were ranking for. But the moment August hit, and you can see that nice little tiny G that's just below it, you can see the dip. And the reason for the dip was because all these articles, all these videos, all this content that was put onto this website were from those that maybe they were celiac, but they did not have essentially a medical designation. They were not maybe of the highest expertise or the authority in writing it, so on and so forth. So what Google did is it devalued it. Those weighting factors we spoke about, it probably took some of the weighting off of the fact of so much content, but they now needed content that had specific expertise, like authority and trust.
So for like eye care practices, what we noticed was, you've been told for years to create blogs, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. But, highlighting this fact, the blogs were written by the practice and not specifically designated to an optometrist, an OD, or an ophthalmologist with some medical credentials. And so what we saw is potential just drop in rankings because Google had said all this great content, we can't validate it came from an optometrist. And so I know with us in our portfolio, when we saw this, we kind of went back to our blog strategy. We started creating bio pages for the different authors and attributing blog content to optometrists, and then we saw a lift again. So if you are watching this and if you go back to your Google Analytics, if you have that installed, August 2018, you may see a similar dip like this. It could be attributed to just how the content, if you have a blog on your website, how it's actually being kind of authored by. And so that's something that we looked at. So, we look at overall just the summary. What is Google looking for? What is it kind of the summary mean? All these changes, what does it all mean?
Yeah, if you were going to look at that really busy slide and you wanted to take, I guess, the 4 bullet points from it, I'd say these are the 4. So 1, again, I go back to always saying that Google is really doing their very best to focus on user experience, answering that question. Number 2, quality content. You want to make sure that the content on your site is fresh. You want to make sure, again, it's answering those questions, because if your website doesn't cover the specific type of content that a user is looking for, chances are you're not going to rank under that search term. Obviously, a high-performing website. So, Kevin, you mentioned at the beginning of the presentation here that we were offering complimentary website audits. This is crucial. It's crucial because you got to know where you're starting. You got to know where the gaps are before you are to accept, say, a search engine optimization program, because there could be a lot of work that needs to be done. There might be a little work needs to be done, but it's so important to know that you have a high-performing website before you get started investing into SEO. And then finally, you know what? It's having the expertise. It's having someone that can go in and, this is where I pump Bryn up a little bit, but like we have a team that goes in, and you want to make sure that someone is always auditing. They're looking at it, because as you saw, those are just like 10 years, but that's not all the updates that Google's making, right? So you want to make sure you're staying with it. So ongoing auditing and management is crucial to success.
Okay, so that all helps. I still am a little, confused in terms of what is SEO. So who here can demystify it for me, break it down so that even I can understand this?
Yeah, sure. Maybe I'll take a stab there, Kevin. So this is also a great way of just kind of breaking it down. So not only going back to what the nature of SEO actually is and talking about the 3 parties involved and what the responsibilities are, this is a great way to say, hey, listen, it's really broken into 2 different sections. There's on-site factors, and then there is off-site factors. And I guess the great thing is, for all the listeners today, these on-site factors, this is something that you can actually go in and look at yourself, right? So you could look at your Google Analytics for website performance. You could see whether it's loading fast, or if you're a great writer, you could write your own fresh content and so on and so forth. But when it comes to, say, if you needed to be a little bit more aggressive, if you wanted something just outside of what an SEO best practice would be, you want to start looking at, like, if you're in a major metropolitan area and you have lots of competitors, you might want to have more of an aggressive SEO type of strategy, which would include offsite. So it includes like link building, and when we say citation cleanup or creation, that's like your name, your address, your phone number, the consistency of how they're listed, and of course the directories that they're listed on. So all of this is very, very important, but really it breaks into 2 different segments, right? So on-site, which is like SEO best practices, and off-site if you're looking to be a little more aggressive.
Okay, so I'm gonna start picking on Bryn here to talk some technical stuff, but I'm fortunate enough to have the opportunity to do some talks over my career and iCare, and I've used an analogy over and over again that has kind of resonated well with people. And so the analogy I use is, imagine you wrote a book. And actually last year, it was one of those kind of life bucket list items that I had. And I actually did publish a book that came out beginning of October of 2019. And the analogy works really well here because, if I wrote this book and I want people to actually go and buy it, how do I get it to show prominently in a bookstore? And so there's 2 sort of things here. One is, imagine I had wrote my book and I didn't give the book a title. And so if you go back here, you can see the book's title is Click, and then the subtitle is Transform Your Business Through Digital Marketing. It sort of clearly says, this is this is what the book is about. This is how I can help you. And so if your chapters are Barnes and Noble, depending if you're Canadian or American, and you are the bookstore manager and you've received a book, most websites that we come across are named. The name of the book, the name of your website is either your practice name or home, called homepage. And it's because web developers are not SEOers. And so they just create it as your name. And so what happens is, when Google's indexing under which keywords to show up for, you're telling Google that your website title is who you are and not how you can help people. So the first thing that we need to do is actually let Google know what you do. And this is kind of going in, we call it on-site optimization. We're going onto the website and we're changing things like your title page, your descriptions, your headings, and Bryn's going to go into this in more detail. But the idea is, it's like taking my book and making sure that I take my name off of the book, where it might show up in like an autobiography section. and instead put how I can help people. And we put that on the cover. So now Google, in this case, Barnes and Noble or Chapters, they read the book and they say, okay, this belongs in the business section. But now everyone's kind of been to a bookstore, you see spine out. The whole shelf is spine out. Why do some of those books get turned face out, cover out? And the analogy I use here is the bookstore, obviously, they want you to find this book because they think you're there to buy it. They think it's going to provide a good shopper experience if they make you find the book that you're there to find easier. And so Google works the exact same way. So the second step of SEO is taking that book and letting the world know what you do. And this is about sort of creating like a digital publicist. Whereas with your book, you would hire a publicist to let the world know. And it's, maybe if you're lucky enough, they make a movie about it or it's on Oprah's book club. However, in the digital world with your website, SEO is like hiring a digital publicist, and they're going to create blogs for you and directory submissions and create ebooks about it and make sure you're listed everywhere. And so letting the world know what you do, Google goes and says, wow, all these people are talking about you. They're referencing you as a website. Therefore, you must provide a great resource or user experience. We should show you up higher up on the page. So that's really the best analogy that I can give it is name your website, what you do, let Google know what you do, and then let the world know what you do. So Bryn, like, how does that sit with you? How does that analogy sort of sit with you in terms of everything you do day to day?
Yeah, that's really good. SEO, obviously, to a lot of people can be kind of mysterious and unknown, but really at the end of the day, all we're trying to do is make it easier for Google to understand what your website is about and ultimately what you offer as a practice. So all we're doing is kind of putting it into language or words that Google can understand more easily.
Great. So let's talk about tools. What are some of the tools used to perform SEO, kind of from your perspective, but also what our audience can do at home themselves?
Yeah, so these are the tools that we mainly use for our clients. So the first one is a domain overview. That just tells us what keywords that you're ranking for already. So for most clients, you'll rank for the name of your practice at the very least. And then depending on how your website is already, you'll rank for hopefully some of the services you offer. The next thing we do is keyword research. So this is where we'll work with you as a practice to kind of determine what you should want to rank for based on what has a certain search volume, but also you as a practice. Maybe you've invested a lot of equipment into dry eye. That's something that we'll focus our keyword research on and focus your SEO program on. And finally, the last thing we look at is organic performance monitoring. And we do this for all of our clients, not just SEO clients. And it keeps us up to date on how you're ranking for specific keywords based on your goals and based on your area.
Okay, so at the end of SEO, is this sort of what a graph should look like? Like when we're monitoring if it's working and seeing growth, what are we trying to see? How high I'm ranking for a particular keyword, a collection of keywords, kind of the whole portfolio. How do I know if it's successful? What do you look at for that?
Yeah, this is a really great example. Obviously, we all love to see the graph going up and to the right. So with a combination of the best practices that we're going to jump into and that monitoring, hopefully your keyword growth looks something like this. So for this client in particular, we started SEO in November, and you can kind of see how their keywords grew over time. And that's keywords overall for things like their brand name and for specific services like dry eye.
What's interesting is you're using the term like keywords or keyword phrases. And even this graph, it shows like 0, 100, 200, 300. That's number of keyword phrases you're actually ranking for, and then sort of higher and higher. I remember, not even that long ago, SEO was sort of sold or decided in terms of specific keyword phrases. Like I'm going to buy optometrist in, my geographic market. You keep talking about sort of keywords as a general. So can you kind of comment on the difference between the keyword as some people might know it, and more towards the holistic approach to just overall rankings?
Yeah, so I say keyword. but it's not necessarily specific words. If you think about how you search and the last time you made a search, a lot of us say we don't search for a specific word. We actually ask Google a question. So that could be kind of a more holistic example of we're not just working on specific keywords, we're actually working on specific searches people are making, like why are my eyes dry? Why are my eyes red? Things like that.
Got it. And I'd imagine with voice search coming in as well, it's becoming, everybody just has different vocabularies and different ways of asking. And so when you have voice and text and talk and all of these things, it's just so important to look beyond just one keyword phrase and really judge SEO in terms of just overall traffic, overall rankings, right? So, okay, let's get down to the bolts and nuts of this. How do we improve SEO? What are some of those easy changes that anybody can really implement today?
Yeah, so these are the easy changes that you'll all be able to make. If there's one thing that I can kind of instill in you today is that don't make any changes to your website. Don't write a blog. Don't do anything based on what you think Google wants. Always put your patients first. And then if you give your patients a good experience when they visit your website, then the rankings will come.
Okay, so we actually have a slide about that. Let's dig in a little bit deeper. So I'm an optometrist. I own my practice. I normally put my patients first in my day-to-day practice. How do I actually put them first when it comes to my website?
Yeah, so this is an example of keyword stuffing, which is an outdated SEO practice. So as Google updates and becomes better and better and learns more and more about what people actually want when they search, they update their algorithm. So in kind of the dark days of SEO, the more you mentioned a keyword, the higher likelihood you had of ranking for that keyword, because Google would say, they mention this keyword all the time. This website is about this keyword. But that's obviously not how humans interact with websites. So if you look at this example here, welcome to our eye care practice optometrist office in Cleveland, Ohio. Here we give exams in Cleveland, Ohio for the best eye care in the Cleveland area. No human talks like that. And Google knows that now. So always have your website content directed to actual people.
Got it. So when you're talking about the written content on the website, I can see this totally makes sense because Google has identified that when you're reading a paragraph like that, it just hurts my head when I read this. And so Google said, okay, we need to really be looking, we're going to reward websites that speak directly to people. Google's trying to add those algorithms in. So that makes sense. What about when it comes to the type of content that we should be creating?
Yeah, so as optometrists or people kind of in the eye care industry, you have a great opportunity not only from an SEO perspective, but for your patients to educate and inform them. And one of the best ways you can do that is through your website and through blog content.
Okay, so what are some examples? Like if I'm sitting at home, I'm an optometrist, and I decide, okay, I agree with this. I want to educate and inform patients. I guess a tip off of my head would be, what are those questions that your patients continually ask more about, right? Like, is that sort of an example of educating and informing? Because if they're asking you, chances are they've gone to Dr. Google already and asked that. So is that sort of the strategy, is one of the strategies is sort of populating content based on questions that you're asked by Google or by your patients already?
Yeah, that's a great way to start off. You know, as people who interact with patients, you have a great idea of what people in your area and what your patients are looking for. So that's a great starting point. Really just think about what your patients ask you all the time.
Okay. We had I think 2 weeks ago, Dr. Joseph Allen was my guest, and we talked about YouTube. And this was very similar type strategy in terms of what type of YouTube content and YouTube videos we should be creating. So I'm seeing sort of a connection here and a strategy of, maybe we can actually duplicate our efforts and increase efficiencies if perhaps we're creating a video to answer these information, and we're writing sort of a blog where we're answering it on our service pages. We're answering it on maybe a medical specialty page like glaucoma. You can create a video, put it on YouTube, have that embedded on your website, and it's a holistic approach sort of help YouTube, also help SEO? Does it all kind of work together?
Yeah, a video is a great way to do it, depending on the topic. Like sometimes, especially for eye care, if you're trying to explain something visual, a video is a great way to do it instead of, writing it all out on a blog. So again, just bringing it back to your patients and how you can convey that information to them in the best way, that will all help with SEO.
Great. Just a reminder to people that are watching, this is a live webinar, which means feel free to input any questions you have, whether into the Facebook comments or the YouTube comments. We see them here on the screen and we can answer them. We are saving some time at the end to answer questions. And actually, Wade has prepared a slide, which are the 5 most common questions that we always are asked. As well, I want to highlight an offer that we have right now, which is a free website audit. We had a lot of people take advantage of this last week. Go to our website, marketingforecps.com, fill out the website audit form. Wade's team analyzes it. A lot of this, the audit, has to do with SEO, the content, sort of the strategy behind it, and then we kind of walk you through some tips and tricks of things that you can do on your website to increase the efficiency. When we work with clients, one of the sort of surprise moments in the early on is, we show a sitemap, and a sitemap is the overview, the collection of all the different pages that we have. And a lot of times, practices might have 5 or 7 pages kind of total for their website. And when we show them ours, the sitemap, we're in the like 20 or 25. I think that surprises a lot of people. Bryn, can you talk about sort of the structure, the website page structure, and why it's important to have individual pages?
Yeah, definitely. So basically, the fewer topics or subjects that you have on an individual page on your website, the more likely it is to rank for that subject or service or topic. So we have an example here of what we do for our clients for eye exams. So these are all different types of eye exams, but they all have their own unique page. And that not only helps them rank better in Google if you're searching for children's eye exam, but it also helps the users, because the person who is looking for a contact lens exam is probably a different user than what's looking for a children's eye exam.
Got it. So what's interesting about SEO, what I've realized over the years, is that it's not just a website that shows up. It's actually the individual web page that has a better chance of showing up. Mm-hmm. And so I remember one of our, someone we've worked with a few years, they were trying to show her vision therapy as an example. And they were very, very renowned as a vision therapist. But it was just included on a services page as like one paragraph, with an old strategy. And so I remember when we created a page dedicated to vision therapy in their area, mm-hmm. and we talked about what you can expect when you come in terms of what vision therapy is and what our process is and what we want you to do next. And we answered some questions. And I noticed almost right away when you went online and typed in like vision therapy in my area, that page ranked almost first, and then the website ranked below that. And so I think that's what's important here, is looking at those main categories of search terms. And you can use tools that Bryn showed earlier and identify how people are searching and create pages around that. And so we've put a tip up here, really just create a unique page for every product or service category that you have. And so the more pages you have, the better chance that they have of ranking, as long as each of those pages has valuable, unique content on them and they're laid out in a great way. You don't want to overwhelm your prospective patients or your patients with so many pages they can't navigate through it. Having a good navigation structure matters, but that's why it's important to have individual pages for each product and service. Mm-hmm. So a lot of questions over the years about blogs. So, talk to me about a blog. Why have we been told for 15 years that we should have a blog?
Yeah, blog content is kind of a tried and true SEO strategy. So it's a great opportunity to rank for keywords or topics or subjects that you might not have a dedicated service page for on your website. So it's a really good opportunity to cover those topics, cover those questions that you get all the time as an optometrist, but you might not be able to have a specific dedicated service page on your website.
Got it. So I'm going to use an example off industry. And this comes from my previous life before I dove into the eye care industry for marketing. I actually ran a childcare company, like with about 50 locations. And I remember thinking about our SEO strategy at the time. It was very relevant for me because I was going through raising a newborn. And my firstborn is the worst sleeper I've ever met, just fights me on everything. Still to this day, he's 10 years old and he doesn't go to bed. But I remember just those long nights. And if you're a parent, you've done this, you remember, you just think you're alone in space. And I'm sitting there in his room and he won't go to sleep. And I go on my phone and I type in, how do I get this kid to go to sleep? And it sort of hit me, what a great blog idea to answer questions that people have in the moment they have a need by a specialist. And so I actually focused our blog efforts and in that company to answering questions that parents have, and who better to answer them than childcare professionals, and actually having them write the content about how I get kids to nap, because I always thought that was a miracle when you actually go in, your toddler's napping. They'll never nap for you, but they'll nap in a room full of 30 others, or how to get them to eat vegetables, or how to, all these things. And that strategy is sort of followed into eye care. And you think about, what do patients need to know? What are things you wish that they knew? And then creating blog content around that. And so what ends up happening is you show up for searches beyond just optometrist or ophthalmologist or optician near me. You're showing up for, why are my eyes red, itchy, scratchy? How long does an eye exam take? How do I put in contact lenses? Things like that you can actually show up for and start growing your reach. Kind of walk us through the question here about what do patients need to know and how that ties into a blog strategy.
Yeah, exactly. So when I'm working on blog strategies for clients, I do a bunch of fancy keyword research with a bunch of fancy tools, but it doesn't really need to be that complicated. As people who speak to patients every day, you have a great idea and understanding of the questions patients ask all the time. The questions you get all the time, chances are they went to Google first and Googled it. And another way you can see topics people ask Google all the time is to just do a quick Google search, and that autofill that comes up, those are the most common searches about that topic. So you can see this example here. I typed in, why are my eyes blank? And those are some of the most common questions people ask.
So as I'm saying, why are my eyes red? That seems to be one of the most common. Why are my eyes itchy and watering? Those are great symptom questions that when we talk about the medic update, who better, right, to answer this question than an optometrist, which is why when you are creating blogs or creating content and you're answering these questions, Google will validate and sort of give preferential treatment to our audience, eye care professionals, for answering these questions more than bloggers, right? So that's sort of where the blog strategy helps you rank higher. Let's talk about unique quality. Why is that important in terms of having individual or unique valuable content rather than just, there's only so many ways to talk about glaucoma, as we've learned. So why it'd be a lot easier just to go and copy and paste off someone else's website. They've already created it. Why don't I just save myself time, energy, money, and just throw that on my website?
Yeah. Besides like the moral repercussions, don't plagiarize stuff, Google won't actually rank duplicate content. If there's a web page that exists on the internet that's already ranked with that content, Google has no reason to rank it again. They're not adding anything to the searcher's experience by ranking that page twice. So if you have a page that's 80% or more similar to another page that already exists on your website or on another website, Google actually won't rank it at all. So if you're writing blogs, when you're writing your website content, make sure it's all unique.
So we've heard unique content matters. Thank you for explaining that. I'm just putting up here on the ticker the free website audit. Our team actually goes through and we have a tool that validates unique content. And homepage is one thing. I think a lot of people's homepages are pretty unique. Where it really matters are those sort of meaty pages, right? The glaucoma pages and the eye exam page. And so we run it through a few different pages on your site to see. And in some cases, we've come up and we've seen certain pages are being duplicated hundreds of times, right? And it's almost like a licensed copy where they're just paying or they're just using it, and we're seeing the same exact word for word copy, hundreds of websites across kind of the world. And what's happening is that they all sort of fall down and they're not ranking well. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, Kevin, if I could add to it maybe a little bit.
Yeah, of course.
Into the audits that we've done, we're actually able in a lot of cases to correlate like dips in traffic, dips in ranking to like duplicate content. So like you said, in the audit that we pull, we will definitely go through your site, through your service pages to see which pages may have duplicate content, and you may not even know, but the fact that you could correlate the two, you can see almost like an immediate bounce back once that page has unique content put on it. Like it's just, it's even for me, it's a bit crazy to see just how fast your traffic can pick up, how fast your rank can pick up, just by essentially getting rid of duplicate content and putting on unique content.
Yeah. I have a question here that I'm going to show, and we can answer it right now. And it says, is it best to title the blog post with the question that you're actually answering? Why are my eyes red? Bryn, what's your answer with that?
That's a great way to do it. It's not the only way to do it, but it is a really good way to do it because, as you can see from the example, that's what people are actually searching. So if you're unsure of how to title your blogs, that's a great way to do it.
Great. Thank you. I have another one here I'm going to show, and it just says, what if Google direct suggests ECP near you if someone searched those questions? This is interesting because if you as a user, as a consumer of Google search, go onto your phone and you actually are wanting to know who's near you, Google will, of course, show those rankings closer to you. But where they put them is the local maps. And that's one of the highest ranking factors for the map section, is where you're physically located. And so they look at like triangulation and GPS and where your IP address is and all of these things to determine your location. And then they will rank the ones closest to you because that provides the best experience, especially in a brick and mortar type of business where location does matter. If you are, say, a takeout restaurant or like a furnace company where they come to you, it definitely matters less. But if location matters, then Google will prioritize that. And then there is an SEO strategy when it comes to optimizing in the local maps. And there's many, many factors that go into that, but populating the correct information, listing all the brands that you carry, listing the services and the products, and also responding to reviews also matters. And you know, whether it's a positive or negative review, going in there and actually responding shows to Google and to potential customers that you are active and you care. And so having a responsive Google My Business profile also really works. All right, let's go into interlinking. So what does that mean? What's the benefit? What's the strategy?
Yeah, so let's say you have a couple blog posts, you have your website all laid out, all the content's great. Well, one of the next best steps you can do is to actually connect those pages. So this is great for users and it's great for Google. So if you mention, you know, during an eye exam, we'll check you for things like dry eye. That's a great opportunity to link to something like a dry eye page. And not only does that give your users a better experience, they're able to go and learn more about dry eye, but it also allows Google, they use what's called crawlers to navigate your website, and it helps the crawlers actually see what pages you have on your website, because crawlers don't navigate the web quite like we do. They don't, you know, go to the menu, click service, click the next one. They use links to go from page to page. So the more links you have between pages on your website, the better Google can rank your website.
Great. And so, you know, we were asked the question, and I'm going to show it here. Can you go into link building in more detail? Like, how do we build external links? And what's interesting, if we look in this example, and even though you've included it as internal sort of interlinking between your own pages, proper link building externally acts the same way. And so when you are working with an SEO company or you're doing it yourself and you're trying to create like reach out and get people to talk about your website, talk about your blog content, looking at their blog content and seeing where they make medical claims or they're talking about areas that you have relevant content. So very similar to this, if you notice a blog where they're talking about eyeglasses or talking about being nearsighted, you can approach them and say, I have a great blog article that sort of backs up the claim you're making here. If you link to my website, you can provide your audience a great experience because you're sort of citing where that information comes from, and it's coming from a credible source, which is, a certified optometrist. And so sometimes that's where the hard SEO comes in, is finding those blog articles, finding those websites, reaching out to them, asking them to link their claims, their content back to yours. And all what that does is when Google indexes their page and they come across this paragraph and they see a link, the web crawler, jeers off, and then it goes to your website and it's ranking it, saying somebody gave you a vote of confidence by linking from their site to yours. So that's really what external link building is all about. There's directories and there's social sites and there's things like that, but it's this interlinking that provides really valuable, authentic link building. So I hope that answered your question there. And Wade, anything with interlinking that you'd like to comment on?
Yeah, no, pretty much everything Bryn just said makes a ton of sense. So at the end of the day, you just want to make sure that people can move from page to page without making sure a spider could crawl through the website, because it's not going to go to the navigation.
Cool. And, Bryn, I'm going to hit you with this technical question. But first, I do want to answer a question from Megan. She talked about, being an independent optician. And, we have talked a lot about the medical side when it comes to optometry. And so she's asking, what about opticians? And in this situation, it's the same idea. That SEO applies to any business in any industry. It comes down to creating those unique pages for products, but also for you, it would be product categories would be also what I look at. So children glasses, stylish glasses, frames, men's frames, sunglasses, all those categories, sort of like an e-commerce store would have, and creating a page talking about it, putting content, putting picture examples. If you have inventory, if you have an e-commerce site, great. You can put that in there. And then when you're creating blog content, think about the same thing. What do your customers care about when they come in to buy glasses? They're going to care about overall fit, function, style. Those are the types of content that you can create that answers their questions online, and not medical, but more style and fit and function. And so that's where we would focus if you're an optician on your SEO, is specifically around that. So Bryn, technical SEO, and I know some of our audience, and I'm going to call out Dr. Jeff Goodhue because him and I love to kind of dive into this. Let's spend a few minutes just talking directly to someone with his level of knowledge. Let's say you're working with a web developer. What are some technical aspects that we can actually share with our web development team, or if you're doing it yourself, that will tangibly help our SEO?
Yeah, I don't want to lose everyone here. So if you work with a web developer, these are things you can bring to him or her. Or if you're a little bit more savvy, the back end of your website, these are things that you should look for. So the first one is H tags. So these are what your headers are coded as on your website. So this is really important for Google because it helps Google understand what the page is about on your website or what the blog is about. So an H1 is the most important, and it's kind of like the title of a book, bringing it back to the book analogy. So a title of a book, there's only one. So each page on your website should only have one H1, and that should be kind of the main thing that the page is about, whether it's adult eye exams or whether it's a blog about why are my eyes red. And then H2s, H3s, goes to like H14, but H2s and H3s are kind of like your subheadings that helps to organize the information a bit better. And then the next one I have up here are meta titles and descriptions. So this is what actually shows up in the Google search results. When you click on a search result, that's the meta title, and the little blurb underneath, that's the description. So Google will make these automatically, but it's always better to make them yourself, and then you can make sure all the right information is there, and it helps make it more likely for people to click on it.
Yeah, because really you can look at this also like it's a text ad. And so many times I see we don't take advantage of the character length because there's a character limit and we see sort of half a sentence. And so I think writing your own, understanding character limits, can really get into the mind of why would somebody be searching this, and how can my website help them at this moment. So every character when it comes to meta descriptions, all of that's really important in terms of just trying to capture that searcher at their interest, having them come on and engage with your page. Moving on, I brought up an analogy. I know that Wade and I like to compete on who has the most analogies in a day, but I really like this one. So Wade, can you kind of go into sort of the, what do you do next, and why am I looking at a picture of a bike?
Yeah, sure, Kevin. It's not quite as colorful as your book analogy, but it's one that I was told a long time ago by an SEO expert, and it holds true to this day. And so it's your typical like bike analogy, because people will come and ask, and business owners and practice owners will always ask in terms of like, how long will it take? And we'll get into these questions kind of on probably the next slide or upcoming slides, but it doesn't happen overnight. So this is a long-term play. So if someone has promised you that you could see results super, super fast, I think I'd be wary of it, because I always use the analogy of it's like riding a bike uphill. So for example, like if your incline is as such and you're riding your bike uphill, you may have to put a lot of effort in the beginning, and there's a lot of strategy involved, just essentially hopefully for that incline to start to kind of level off. But make no mistake, at no point in time for SEO does it ever become like just flat, or no time you're going downhill. It's always uphill, just the incline changes a little bit. And so what you don't want to do is you don't want to get involved and all of a sudden say, I put 3 months of effort into this because someone told me I was going to get these great results in 3 months, all to find out that you now stop, and all the efforts you put into it, that bike starts to go back downhill. And so all efforts are a bit of a waste. So again, this riding a bike uphill is something that you want to keep at it. So you're going to see results, and they're going to come incrementally, but as they come, it is so well worth it. So again, bottom line is that when you're going to get into SEO, know that it is a bit of a labor-intensive type of product. It does require time, but the reward just keeps paying back again and again and again.
All right, so I see your analogy. I'm going to match you, raise you an analogy. And one that I like to use is renting and owning real estate, kind of your house. And so advertising on Google, which we're going to get to in a few weeks, is really like leasing or renting space on Google. You don't own it. There's no real estate. You have to pay to be there. And so it's great. You get the benefits of being there. You get to show up, and you can click on your website. So you get the benefits of renting a house. But the second you stop paying your landlord, you're gone. And that's sort of you don't enjoy any of the benefits. Whereas with SEO, it's like a 25-year mortgage and I'm not saying it takes 25 years, but the point is that it's a commitment. It takes a while, but once it's paid off, once you've achieved that sort of top of first page status and you're there for a while, your dependency on having to pay to get people to click on your website can go down. You start getting, Bryn said, 75% of traffic clicks on those first 3 listings. Imagine what happens with your business when you're in those top 3, especially in busy areas or in an area that doesn't have a lot of competitors. Like you may only be in a town with 4 competitors, but if you're 4th spot, even middle of the first page, but if you're in the 4th spot, you're only getting a small piece of that pie. Whereas if you invest and kind of work with your website, have it show up higher, now you just are getting that much more traffic to your website, and you're enjoying sort of the same benefits of home ownership. It's just you get to live there without having to pay it all the time. So I love your analogy, and let's keep going. So I want to talk about the top 5 questions. And these are the ones that you and I both receive all the time, and Bryn gets it now when she's working with clients in her portfolio. And I'm going to play the role of the practice owner, and I'm going to say, Wade, tell me, how do I do it? How do I reach the #1 spot on Google?
So funny enough, Bryn and I have had conversations around these 5 questions, and the answer always kind of boils down to depends. But you know what? We'll do better than depends. How's that? So how do you reach #1 spot? So again, I think because going back to a bit my bike analogy, that because it's a labor-intensive type of program, we kind of need to know where we're starting. So is that incline this? Is it this? What market are you currently in? There's a lot of factors in there. But I'd probably go back to the client, and I have gone back to clients and just said, so reach the #1 spot under what keyword or key phrase? How about like multiple key phrases? Because in a lot of cases, say optometrist sounds like an extremely general keyword, but there could be things like children's eye exams. It could be a type of contact lens. It could be a medical niche, whether it be dry eye therapy or vision therapy, that you want to start to rank for. And that combination of keywords, if you can rank quicker, like in say a 4, 5, 6, 8 month period, into those keywords, you may receive way more traffic to your website, which then turns into conversions, which then turns into like a return on investment far quicker than worrying about the number one spot under like say one main general keyword. So I would want to ask more questions when clients come up or practice owners come up and ask us about how do they reach the number one spot.
All right, well, let's keep going. How much does it cost? What does SEO cost me?
Ooh, well, you know what? Again, I think I would caution all practice owners that if you're getting a dollar figure that just seems to be a blanketed dollar figure, so let's say, yep, we only charge this amount of money, knowing that this is a labor-intensive product and it is very custom to every different practice owner because your websites are different and because the market you're in is different, because the competition and how much competition is different, I would say that you definitely want to understand, first of all, what your SEO company is going to do for you, and then associate the costs to that, how much labor. So I'll give you an example. In a lot of cases, in my time, and you mentioned in the beginning, throughout my career, we've had, you'll hear of practice owners receiving quotes of very minimal. And the question is like, how many articles would you write? Like how much rich content would you create for that price? And it doesn't make sense because it's a very labor-intensive type of product.
Yeah, and I think that, I come across a lot of times where we'll see an SEO product for like $100 a month. And when you look at everything that we've talked about today, really what you might be getting is sort of an automated service that might put you on one directory, or maybe some on-site optimizations, or even just somebody monitoring what's going on. True optimization comes down to doing all the research, creating all this great content, publishing it, and then also doing outreach and going to other bloggers and other social sites and other directories and having them, kind of negotiating with them and saying, we need to get, I'd love to be able to have you link this content to your site. And so that's where it becomes very labor intensive. And that's where, based on how competitive your market is and how competitive your competitors are being, how aggressive they're being, that's why SEO really should be custom quote. And it can change. Price should change. It shouldn't be a flat rate for the rest of your life. It should be sort of updated and looked at. Bryn, when can I expect to see results? So if I'm doing this myself, if I'm paying a company, what can I expect in terms of a timeline?
I don't want to say it depends, but it does depend. It kind of depends on, how competitive the keyword is, how competitive your market is. But really, if I had to give a time frame, it really is. It's a long-term strategy. So I would say at least 3 to 6 months before you start seeing results.
So basically a little bit more than this, a little bit less than that.
Yeah.
It's kind of in between there. I love it. I'm gonna take number 4, and how can I measure my ROI? Really, if you have Google Analytics installed in your website, if you go one step further, if you install lead tracking, like call conversion tracking, and you understand conversion rates, and out of every 100 people that come to your website, how many actually book an appointment and what an average new patient is worth, you can actually determine the ROI of SEO, because you can say, okay, year over year, what has my traffic increase been? And let's just say the hard number is, on average, it's 1,000 visits a month. And I know my conversion rate is, for intensive purposes, 100 or 10%. So I'm seeing 100 new opportunities come in, and of that, I maybe see 40 new patients. Well, the 40 new patients is the ROI, because if you hadn't invested in SEO, you would be seeing 1,000 less people on your website. So there are definite ways to set up and look at the ROI. If you don't have any of that tracking, then just inherently know that the higher you place on Google, the more people are seeing it and the more people are booking with you. And the last one is, how long do I need to invest in SEO? That one's interesting. Again, it does depend on how competitive the market is, how algorithms change. It's important to always invest time in SEO. That should never go away. And whether that's you doing it yourself and looking at Google Analytics, looking at search terms, just doing searches yourself, looking at competitors, that should always be there, just in terms of good business practice, paying somebody, if you're investing in SEO, there's always new keyword terms. There's always new phrases. The way that us as consumers are changing our behavior is continually adjusting and changing. And so there is a case to be made that SEO should just be part of a cost of business if it matters to you to show up high. But what that is and how much, that can definitely change. Kind of pop along. We only have a couple minutes here. I want to talk about, from a marketing for ECP's perspective, what is available in May and starting sort of next week. We are launching a new social media program. It is available coming out May 18th. So please kind of stay tuned for that. I just saw a question come in regarding social media having impact on SEO. Yes, it does. It's not a massive ranking factor, but it definitely does matter. Having a strong social presence absolutely helps. And does the number of stars on Google change rankings? They say no, but we sort of believe that the higher stars have a better chance of showing up, but it's not sort of written literature. Back to us, we actually have launched a marketing membership program. What that means is you get a website and the website comes SEO ready. Bryn and her team actually go through and look through the website and make sure that it is SEO optimized. We include a video library, a social media library, marketing strategy, a social media strategy, reporting that we've talked about. All that's included. And our programs start at $250 a month. So if you are interested in sort of a revamp of marketing, we have those, as well as if you just want to get started with a website audit. We've talked about that. So we do have a website audits. And then we have a practice relaunch success package coming. So we know that doors are starting to open. We know that some practices are going back to work. It's sort of phased in now. We want to make sure that you launch successfully. So we will be creating, and this is coming out next Wednesday, we are going to have all these campaigns created for you to download for free. So you can go in, there's going to be videos and social posts and website banners and e-blasts, and you can take all of it and use it for free. So we're really excited to launch that. Look out for that for next Wednesday. Also next Wednesday, we have Shai Harani will be joining us. She is one of our marketing directors. She works with Wade. We're going to talk about creating promotions that actually bring patients in. So many times we create promotions and we're marketing to people that are already at the till, ready to pay, and they realize that there's a discount and all you're doing is taking away profit. So when you create a promotion, it should actually bring in new people to your practice. And so we're going to talk all about that from an annual strategy right down to the tactics that really work to drive in people. For a recap, really focus in on the patients. And we talked about that lots. And thank you, Bryn, and thank you, Wade, for that. Focus in on your patients and the information they need and populate that on your website. We talked about this last week. We're talking about it again today. Don't treat your website like an expense that you just have to pay to get off. It really is an investment because it is supposed to bring back more traffic, more eyeballs, pun intended, and more patients. And lastly, unique, valuable content will always make all the difference. And so those are sort of three big things that we want to leave you with. I would like to kind of pose the option that if you have any questions, even 2 weeks from now when you're watching this, and you go on and you type in any questions you have, both Bryn and Wade and our social media team are sort of always on, and we will be able to answer those questions for you. If you'd like, you can actually email Wade directly at wade@4ecps.com, 4ecps.com, and he can do that for you. I would like to take another second to thank Johnson & Johnson. They are a fantastic partner of this entire webinar series. We couldn't do this without them and just their support in coming up with the topics and really working with us to help kind of spread the news about this. So thank you to them as well. At the end of the day, thank you all for watching. If you'd like a free website audit, go to marketing4ecps.com. We also have a page entirely made for COVID resources. We have every one of our webinars there. We have downloadable ebooks like an e-commerce ebook. We have a new marketing playbook for 2020. All that's there. Thank you, Wade. Really appreciate the analogies. Thank you for keeping SEO simple so we can understand it. Bryn, thank you for hitting us with the technical stuff. Very well appreciated. Thank you both, and thank you to everybody watching.